Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News, coming to you from our digital desk. We want to have the conversation about it came out late yesterday, right around 5 o'clock, that the Ohio Department of Transportation, after once denying the permit to build next to Cleveland Hopkins Airport, we're of course talking about the proposed Browns Dome project in Brook Park. They reversed after getting a third party to come in and study the potential impact, the height of the stadium. It would need a waiver because it was 58 feet above the measurement that the FAA uses. Remember, the FAA had already looked at this last year and given the approval, but then you had the city of Cleveland, the director of the airport, the director of port control is his position. He came out against it, saying this could negatively impact the airport. So ODOT went ahead after hearing that from the city. They denied it. Well, then the Browns and the Haslam Sports Group, they started their appeal process. So ODOT went out and hired a third-party company. Probably a pretty good idea for something so controversial. That report is now out. We're not going to get too into the woods with it, but I do want to show you some of the conclusions by this third-party company. The two runways that run sort of north to south, northeast to southwest, those are the main two runways at Cleveland Hopkins. Very rarely does Cleveland Hopkins use what's known as runway 28 or 10. That's the east-west runway at the top, that blue line at the top. Now you can see where the stadium is proposed, that rectangle or that square that's kind of diagonally positioned down to the lower right. So really the only runway in question was that one, runway 28. And in fact, they went back and they looked at what are called a couple of different things: VFR, visual flight rules, and then IFRs, instrumentation flight rules. And you can see the purple dots now represent the stadium. It does not coincide with what they would deem a problem for flights coming in and out of Cleveland Hopkins. Here was their final assessment here, this capital airspace final assessment, which coincides with what the FAA had already determined. At the proposed height, the stadium will not degrade or diminish aviation safety. Hey, that's very important. I think we can all agree that flights coming in and out of Cleveland Hopkins don't need to be dodging a dome stadium, but this third party says that's not an issue. It does not limit visual flight rule operations in any way, and it does not limit instrumentation flight rule operations in any way. Their final conclusion: the airport will continue to operate exactly as it currently operates after the stadium is constructed. That was, of course, the big determination. We're going to welcome in now a business law professor from Case Western Reserve University. Eric Chafee has been following this saga from the very beginning. Professor, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Give us your initial reaction to seeing this sort of about face from ODOT just in August denying the permit, now in late September approving the permit. What's your initial reaction?
I'm not surprised, meaning that aviation, it's a highly regulated industry, both on the federal and state level, and there's an incentive here to get this right, meaning that, when concerns were raised about the height of the stadium, ultimately it's not surprising that, ODOT came out and said, we're going to put a hold on this. But that being said, I mean, the FAA did analysis and they didn't have concerns. So I'm not surprised that ODOT basically is letting this move forward.
Who is this a win for? I know that's kind of a softball, but were they popping champagne in Berea yesterday?
I'm guessing the Browns organization is very happy by this announcement. It clears the way for the stadium. There's still some pending litigation going on about the Modell law, but at the same time, I mean, this was a big hurdle. Aviation is heavily regulated, and as a result of that, that could have put an end to this.
Yeah, walk us through that. When we all heard this back in August when ODOT came out, and I talked to the governor was unaware that ODOT was going to make this determination. I even spoke with representatives from ODOT who said the person who denied the permit may not have even known that this was the Browns' proposed stadium. When a permit comes in from the FAA, there are dimensions saying the southwest corner is going to be this high, the northeast corner is going to be this high. And whoever at ODOT denied it may have just looked at those dimensions and said, well, we've gotten a letter from the city of Cleveland, from the director of port control. They don't want it, so we're going to go ahead and deny it. How does this look from the city's perspective? This may have been one of their last ditch efforts. They thought they had found sort of a golden arrow to shoot down this idea. From the city's perspective, how does this come off? Oh, and it looks like Professor's shot has frozen. We'll see if we can get him back here. We'll see if we can get him back in. But in the meantime, that's where we are with this. And it will be interesting from the city's perspective. We have already heard from the county. They are disappointed at ODOT's decision. And we are going to go from there. So we heard from the professor there, a couple of responses. Doesn't look like we're going to get his shot back. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and conclude this. As you heard him say, this is a pretty big hurdle for the Browns to overtake. And as the professor said, this is aviation. This is heavily regulated. This is not something that anybody is going to mess around with. And so the fact that, and it looks like we do have the professor back. Professor, I was right in the middle of asking you, how does this come off from the city's perspective? They thought this was their golden arrow, that this was finally something that they had found to shut this whole project down and potentially keep the Browns downtown. This can't look good from the city's perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's one of those things where often to achieve your goals politically, there can be multiple different paths. I think the city really very much did think that this was going to be what kept the Browns downtown, or at least gave them some more leverage in this process. I'm sure they're disappointed by this, but the abundance of caution really was not surprising. And then in addition to that, the fact that after further review, especially with the FAA approval, that this ended up being called back, isn't that surprising as well?
You mentioned that there is still pending litigation. There's actually 3 lawsuits that are still out there. There's the city suing the Browns, claiming they're breaching their contract by even talking about moving the team. There's the Browns suing the city in federal court, saying the Modell rule no longer applies now that it's been changed at the state level in the state legislature. And then you have the 3rd lawsuit, people saying you can't use unclaimed funds to build projects around the state, whether it's the Browns. Remember, they're going to put that money into a pot, and that pot can be used in Cincinnati and Columbus. It can be used for the arts. It can be used for stadiums. Where are we after clearing this hurdle? Are we much closer, or when it gets to that, you're in the law field, could this be a sticking point, or is it a matter of time before these are cleared up?
That's a great question. So with the prohibition that ODOT had placed, that pretty much put a kibosh, it put an end on the stadium project moving forward until that was cleared. These other suits, it's likely that construction, in fact, will actually end up moving forward unless there's some sort of dramatic change. With the Modell lawsuits, we're still waiting to figure out whether or not that's constitutional. There are a lot of open questions there. with the unclaimed funds for lawsuit, likely in the event that it would be found that it's not permissible to use those funds, the state would find another way of funding this. But it's one of those things where we haven't seen the end of this litigation, and I doubt we're going to see the end of it for years to come.
Yeah, but at some point, if they're going to be ready to play in, I believe 2029 is the first season they would have to play there, a shovel is going to have to be put in the ground. I'm going to give you the final word here. With this hurdle being cleared, how much closer, if you had to put a percentage, are we at 90%? Are we at 50% sure that it's going to go in Brook Park? You get the final word.
I'm going to say 90%. That will be a hit for the city of Cleveland. There are concerns about who's going to demolish the Browns Stadium downtown in the event that that happens, that I think that there's going to be a lot of fighting over, and a lot of questions about whether or not the Browns organization is going to pay for that. But, honestly, with the Modell law, there's so much uncertainty surrounding it, as to what's an offer, that it's likely that that's not going to move forward. With using the unclaimed funds to fund the stadium, it's likely if for some reason that would fail, that there would be another alternative that would be used. And some of those were discussed in the legislative process. So like it or hate it, it's very likely we're going to see the Browns playing in Brook Park.
Professor Eric Chafee, he is a business law professor at Case Western Reserve University. We certainly appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you.
All right, take care. That's going to wrap up our discussion on this. Just wanted to get an outsider's perspective. We did ask ODOT for an interview today. They declined, saying basically they are done. Once they've issued the permit, they have nothing left to say about this issue. The city is not doing interviews today, and we've also requested interviews with the Browns and have not heard back from them either. So you are either celebrating or sulking in their perspective corners. Remember, we have 3.5 hours of news and first alert weather coming up at 3 o'clock on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend.